Why do we talk about the problem space? The core idea is that if you're something like me, you jump to conclusions very, very quickly. You see a problem and think, how could I solve that? Probably with AI, with blockchain, and blah, blah, blah. You come up with a cool concept, you fall in love with the concept, and you try to execute on the concept. This happens to me basically every time I see a problem, and the issue with that is that these solutions barely work. So rather than jumping to a conclusion, we all should think first about how do we solve how do we understand the problem, what is the problem, who is having the problem, and so much more. So please stay with me for 5 minutes or so we can discuss the problem space. Where is the problem space important? I unfairly already asked you, where do you consider yourself in the stages? Now is the time where this comes in again as important. We were saying when you're working through an entrepreneurial idea, you go through the ideation phase, the incubation phase, and the acceleration phase. Of course, this is a framework. Frameworks are always simplifications, but this actually helps in the way we do a lot. The ideation phase is when we don't know exactly what we do and we need to find a full team and a problem space. So in this first phase, which can last, depending on how you work on it, anything from 4 weeks to 12 weeks typically, but also, of course, very much longer, we want to find a space of a problem. In this space, we do not want to work on a solution yet. So everything we are learning today is probably somewhere on the end of this phase and on the start of the next phase. So we want to understand the problem. We want to understand who else has the problem, why do they have the problem, in what environment, and so much more. So focus on that. There's only this thing you need to do in the early stages. Once we have understood the problem, we can basically go to the next stage, elaborate the next stage, and say, okay, now we have the team and the problem space are in the incubation phase, and do all the things to understand how the solution can be. Of course, from a market side, so how does the market look like? How do I get to the market? What we call marketing, what we call sales. How does the product need to look like? And of course, product is everything from the technical product to every single touch point. Every single touch point with your potential customer or your user is part of the product. And how does the business look behind that? That's also true if you're doing something just for free, just for fun. You, of course, still need to operate it somehow. So if you're doing an open source project, you probably still have to maintain it. So how does this time commitment that you give it look like? And in the end of this stage, this is, of course, the stage where we do a lot of the prototyping. This is a stage where we do a lot of the understanding how the solution can look like. At the end of this, we do want to have some revenues. We do want to have an understanding of how we have to execute the solution. And we do want to be at a stage where we can go probably to an investor and know how the plan from a financial side looks like. And this is why prototyping is important, because at this stage, of course, we don't want to already build a perfect product when we don't know how those three things work together. When we don't know that, we cannot build a fantastic product. We can only do that in the next stage, which is the acceleration stage, where we build for growth, for example. So at this point, we need to find a solution that scales. We need to find a solution where we can automate. We need to find a solution that can build a valid business. And at this stage, we probably want to go away from the low-code prototypes that we will learn how to build and build a high-code tool that scales for millions and millions of users. In this case, of course, it's still important to know how to do low-code, and the guys who are in this stage already, it's still very important because we, of course, want to scale. We need to scale, and you know the overhead scales less than linear. If we serve twice as many customers, and we have no automation and no processes in place, we need more than twice of the people to serve them, which of course is not really growing with you. So we want to find processes, we want to find automation, so we can serve 100 customers, we can serve 1,000 customers, we can serve 10,000 customers with the same overhead or just a little bit more overhead. These are the stages. Try to keep them a little bit in mind. It's something that whenever we talk, I'll probably throw at you at some way, so at some point it will stick. And on the other hand, you know that startup at the core, if we even simplify it more, is super simple. You're basically just trying to do two things. You try to put an offer to a need. That's everything you need. That's everything you do all the time. You put an offer to a need. In other words, to flip that space basically by 90 degrees, say you're building something and you're trying to get it in the hands of a user. So this is really the only thing you do. And the way we do it, we learned that from Steve Blank, from Eric Ries, with the 4 Steps to Epiphany and the Lean Startup. We have the build, measure, learn loop. So we start with learning. We understand a problem. On this, we build a first experiment, a first prototype. From that, we measure something. How this completely works in an operated way, we will talk about tomorrow morning. And we go back, learn a little bit, and do this in an iterative way. This is a super simple idea. It's super hard to think about. When we did that, we totally overdid it. So with my first startup in 2016, we completely overdid this. We made a huge list of hypotheses, then tried to build scientific experiments and try to make statistics on how to learn this. This is not how this is supposed to work. You're just working with your most critical hypothesis. Is this something that somebody would pay money for? Is this something that solves my problem? You build a very short prototype that just tries to solve this one thing. If I gave you whatever I'm building, are you using that or are you not using that? If you're not using that, then I'm failing. And this is what I measure. You're not using that, so I learned that apparently the thing I did was not the thing how I should have done it. And when you're wondering, okay, how do we measure? The rule of thumb is around about if in the very early stages 5 people tell you the same experience, then you can see it as validated and then you can see it as falsified, which also means in the early stages per critical hypothesis that you have, again, criticality, assessing criticality is something we do tomorrow morning, you should talk to 20 potential users. So, and the other thing we had huge problems with is understanding what to do when. So if you've done a startup project already, you might know this problem that you start with a survey. After the survey, you build a mock-up. After the mock-up, you do a quantitative interview or something like that. And it's super, super unstructured. And the problem is actually solved. The problem is solved in science already, and I stole this from medical research. It's the hierarchy of evidence, which in medical terms means that you start on the very bottom with anecdotal evidence. For example, my aunt had a cold, then she took Globally, and it went better. This is some kind of evidence, so somebody somewhere already told you about this. But medical research, of course, wouldn't be medical research if they said, oh, okay, then apparently Globally works. But no, you climb up the ladder. From this, you try to build a theory and try to find other aunts or other people that took Globally and went better. So you try to make from this reasoning a causal chain, and you go higher and higher. Then you go with interviews, then you go with studies, then you go with experiments. At some point, you will do meta-experiments, which is the top of the pyramid in the research field. And you can say, looking at all those controlled experiments where we controlled for other effects, like in the case of Globally, the placebo effect, we can see that Globally has no effect on anything for that matter whatsoever, and can say, okay, despite your aunt saying that, it's still not scientifically true. And we, of course, try to do this very same thing. And you probably have had this when you're thinking about a startup. My mom said she has problems when she does this and that. It's good that my mom says it, and if I can solve my mom's pain, it's fantastic that I do that. But that doesn't mean that it's a problem for a market. I need to go from the anecdotal evidence with first qualitative interviews, build a theory from it, go to quantitative interviews, understand the strength of the connection between the theoretical blocks, I hope you can follow me, And from that, if I understood how this mechanism works, then I go into wireframing, then I go into prototyping with functional prototypes, with paid prototypes, and eventually work my way up to a sustainable business, which of course is the highest form of evidence that the thing we are solving is actually something worth solving. There's a question. A paid prototype is a prototype you can ask money for. So also with the low-code tools we have, you can, for example, if we say easiest prototype, you want to sell something online, then a paid prototype would just be something that accepts a credit card for whatever you're selling. It still does not need to be the scalable solution, but you already know from your non-scalable, messy prototype that people are willing to pay money. This also from the measure segment that we will also cover tomorrow. There are, of course, different kinds of currencies, so to say, what you want to have. For example, if somebody clicks, I'm interested, that's nice, but that's not as valued as much as somebody giving you their email address. And when they give you their money, when they open the wallet, this is exactly the kind of validation that you want. Very good question. So paid prototype, at some point, does it have something? Yeah. At some point, you need the people to also open their wallet, because only if they do that, then you're on the road to a sustainable business. That was a question first?
Why is it recommended to start with a qualitative approach and then move on to a quantitative approach?
Fantastic. If you have, the question is, why do we start with a qualitative approach and then go to a quantitative? You can jump that if you know the theory. If you have some patience, it's in 2 slides where we will go through that. The quick summary is that if you don't know the theory, maybe, no, I would not know how I visualize that. But with the qualitative approach, you want to see A causes B, just by saying, okay, I've heard this from a lot of people that A causes B, and with the qualitative approach, you can pay numbers to that and say, in 50% A causes B, and in 30% it doesn't, or in 30% it works better, works backwards. So you usually want to use qualitative to build theory and quantitative to validate theory. Very nice question, Ben. There was a question first.
I wanted to ask, in this entire pyramid, where we can say that we have achieved a product market fit, is it like a sustainable growth? Somewhere in between?
Also amazing question. The question is, where do we see the product market fit there? The interesting thing that I learned when working with a lot of startups, also as a startup consultant in basically every stage, that product market fit is less of a point and more of a process. So you will fit one market that might not be a scalable market. So let's say again we're selling something. We're selling this, and then you say, oh, I've got product market fit. People are buying this. Yeah, but only a very limited kind of market is buying this, and to make it a bigger product market fit, so to serve another market, is then another step. But usually it's the point you try to get to a kind of product market fit right between the. So when you accelerate, you of course want to have this classical product market fit when you know what you're selling and you understand the black box. You know, the black box of your business is basically you throw €1 on top and you know that €2 come out at the bottom. And you probably know that with all your metrics. Once you have that, then you definitely have something like product market fit, but it doesn't need to mean that your company is growing like infinity, is hyper growing, because this is just a. Where am I going with this? The term product market fit is a little bit misleading in that it says it's a linear point. And if you're thinking intellectually about this, it can't be a linear point because you're part of the market and you're affecting the market whenever you act in this. So when you try to fit the product and the market, then the market changes. Then you have to adjust your product. Then the market changes. Then you adjust your product. So it's always going that direction. There was a question?
I have
2 questions?
First question is like during the acceleration phase, many startups fail. So on the last slide you said like you have to use
So the question is, if I paraphrased it right, if you fail in the acceleration stage, is that because you're using a gut feeling instead of numbers? And I would say maybe this is not the perfect framework for that, but somewhere between Series A and Series B, you will change your entire messaging towards investors also, but also internally you need to change from you have a feeling that somebody needs my cool new AI feature to I can tell it with numbers that people need it. And those numbers doesn't necessarily need to show that Instagram marketing has this this conversion rate and this customer lifetime is so big, but you should know your cascade, your black box. And I would say some startups that fail in the late stages do fail because they miss the point where you need to transfer from building something, from prototyping something, trying to understand your black box, to describing the black box and optimizing the black box, bringing the cost down, bringing the customer lifetime up, and bring the shopping cart basically of your product up. So I would say yes, despite this comes more from a feeling from my side and not on data from my side. Good question though, thank you. Second question, yes, of course.
You say sustainable business. So is it means just economical, or it also include the environmental factors?
Fantastic question. So your question is the sustainability. Am I only thinking about economic success, or can it be other things like social, environmental, and stuff like that? So this framework limits a little bit on the economic perspective. Why is that? Because building a company costs money. So you can say it's not the best system, but it's at least very transparent. We have one currency, which is money, and at some point we want to make enough money at least to sustain the entire operations that we have. If we have that, of course we can think about other things, that of course we not only want to be rich, but we also want to do good. And honestly, this would be my wish for all of you, that you get super wealthy, maybe a little bit with the knowledge I give you and that Jana gives you. But I also, of course, we have so many issues in society and in the environment. So, of course, I would very much love to see you doing something that is improving our state and not only your bank account. But this at the moment is a little limited to the financial returns. Thank you. I think in the back there was another question, or did I misread that? No? All right. Then we will continue and go back to the question, why do I do it in this direction, or should do it in this direction? Also, all of these lines are not linear processes, so you will find that when you build your wireframe, that you need to question a lot of the foundational hypotheses that you made. So at some point, you maybe already have a paid prototype, and then you say, okay, nobody's actually buying for this, although 100,000 people said they are super eager to see that and gave me their email address. So you need to go back maybe to the qualitative interview and say, hey guys, you gave me your email address to say you want to have it when it's out. Now it's out and you don't want to use it. What did I make wrong? So it's really an iterative process, but the quality, and I think this is the really output of this chart, the quality of the data that you get is of different quality. So the higher you go, the more reliable you can go on your data. And if you miss out the lowest parts, then the data you build up there and the insights you build up there are very, very fragile. Okay. Those, of course, are connected with problem, solution, business. We are in the problem phase, so this is why we are talking about this now, without going too much into the prototyping, which will be more on the solution side. Why do we start with the qualitative, sorry, I always confuse that, data, is because somebody says, when I do this, my arm hurts. And our job in the very early stage is to diagnose what is happening there, to understand Again, medical research has a lot of terms for that, and if you come from medical research, this is probably something very intuitive for you. If you're not from medical research, it is something that it would make sense for us to all read in, because they build insanely strong theories. So we want to diagnose that. We usually work with anecdotal evidence with very small n's. So I talk to 5 of you and I hear, okay, there could be something, the issue that you have and that you have and that you have and that you have sounds somewhat similar. Maybe I can diagnose something that comes out from this. And from this diagnose, I of course have to now try to separate everything you say into the corresponding parts. So you will tell me a lot loaded with emotions, with ideas that you already have, with your experience, with convictions, with so much. And the hard job that I have in also every kind of qualitative research, I need to get to the facts that underlie that and try to build a theory. Without knowing you, I don't know your experiences, I don't know your convictions, I don't know the ideas that you already have. Oh wow, this doesn't look good. How to ask questions? Let's read this up at home. But of course, what we want to do, you probably have learned that there's also this book out there called The Mum Test by Robert Fitzpatrick, which is quite good for what it's trying to do. There are also a lot of seminars at TOM, how to do qualitative research. So we want to ask open questions, not say, does it hurt when you do this, and ask for yes or no, but when does it hurt, why does it hurt, and stuff like this. You basically try to unbias your questions. Once we have done this, so we work with quantitative data. This is not true. We want to work with qualitative data. Sorry, I said I'm always confusing this. Qualitative data, not as it says on this chart. And from this, we want to analyze the theory. So we have a first idea why people say what they say. And now with around 20 people, we want to get from a subjective, unstructured interview, they are subjective and unstructured, to a semi-structured, to something where we can build theory. So in general, how does this look like? You have probably heard that there are unstructured interviews, semi-structured interviews, and structured interviews, and this is exactly what we do. With the unstructured interviews, I'm just asking you for your experiences. It's super biased what you tell me. So I cannot really derive anything from this. I'm going to a semi-structured interview where I already try to unbias some things that you will tell me and try to build a theory out of that. And with a structured interview, and later even with the survey, I'm taking out all the biases, but I'm putting you already in boxes. So you, of course, need to answer the way I intend to you, which then gives the answer to the question, why do I not start with quantitative, with high numbers? Because if I ask you, if you do this with your arm, does it hurt? And you say, yes, it hurts. Okay, it's probably because the table is made out of this material. No, it's of course not, because punching anything hurts. So I try to push you in a theory that statistically I can find valid, despite the underlying statistic is not rooted in reality. Does this make sense? Nice, cool. Research theory. Perfect, so creating interviews, how do you do that? Of course, when you do that, that is something very valuable for you if you are at the stage of you in the ideation stage. Follow this 4-stage process. It's very simple. As I said, you get the slides. Just do that. Maybe I will do a longer template at one point. Gather some intel, know who you are talking to, what is their background, what are their experiences maybe, what is their current situation, so you can get a lot of background information without needing to ask them, where do you work, what is your position right now? I don't have to ask that to you while we're doing an interview. That's a waste of your time, of my time. I can go to LinkedIn and get this information. That set the stage, so thank the participant for participating, give a little bit of the background, then do the interview, and the follow-through, the most important parts of all the interviews. This is something where you might be able to learn something. Always ask, who else could I talk to? It's super hard if you're in a specific problem field to get to talk to more plant managers or so. Ask them for introduction. Who are other plant managers I can talk to? Can I come back to you when we are further down with that? So you already have a lead who gives you new leads to talk to, who can probably be a first customer for your product, and who can potentially be an expert to be on your side. So also ask them, can I do something for you? Can I share the results of this interview with you after we are done, or something like that? So this is probably the most important thing that you can make wrong if you forget about this. All right, and then the quantitative data, you want to work with more people, so usually more than 100, more than 20 to fit in this framework, but to make statistically significant sayings, you want to have it more than 100. And this is highly structured, and your job is to verify and to test if the theory that you built is actually working. And with that, you can define the problem space. And the problem space is basically this on your left-hand side. So the problem space consists of the customer. The customer wants to reach a goal. In the middle of the goal and the customer, there's an obstacle that they need to overcome, and there are boundary conditions that they are having. For example, budget restrictions, time restrictions, the environment they are in. And if you can describe this problem space in a well-mannered way, you're in a way stronger position to build a solution. The opposite way to do this, which is the more intuitive way, is to start with a shiny new thing, to put a feature on the thing, to claim it reaches a goal, and to try to push it to a customer. In the couple of years that I've worked with startup, I've seen that working exactly once. So if you want to build something with a higher probability to 1 in probably 1,000, then I would highly recommend you with the counterintuitive way, where you start with the customer and the customer problem first, and try to put off the cool technology that you're trying to build or the cool shiny thing. Just because you came up with this doesn't mean that it's fantastic. I came up with so many shitty ideas that nobody wanted, so I'd rather stay you with this framework. How to get there? I will share a resource on T12S with you with a lot of questions that you can ask yourself, that you can challenge yourself with. Excuse me, that you can challenge yourself with to think about the problem space. And only once you have done this, you should go to the prototyping, which will be the next step. This is my part on the problem space. Are there questions on how to find a problem?